now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Rose, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Craig, for holding this vital hearing today, and thank you, Secretary Rollins, for your testimony and joining us today. I want to begin by applauding the Trump-Vance administration on the nomination of now Secretary Rollins to lead the U.S. Department of Agriculture and guide the backbone industry of our country. Secretary Rollins, I appreciate your diligent work thus far delivering on a new and empowering era for our farmers, and look forward to working with you to secure a prosperous future for all of rural America. As a fellow former state FFA officer and a former Commissioner of Agriculture and a fierce conservative, I am confident the department will continue to thrive under your leadership. And I would be remiss if I didn't say I was not excited about your newly confirmed Deputy Secretary, Stephen Vaden, yes, from our own state of Tennessee, who's a dear friend and I know will be a capable ally and
yes, he will.
Assistant to you. Secretary Rollins, thank you for your swift action in suspending the implementation of the previous administration's overreaching and impractical rule, the Horse Protection Act amendments. As the department engages with qualified individuals to restructure the rule, can you highlight details of the administration's plan to ensure a new rule has not only longevity and remains practical for equestrian industries, specifically the Tennessee walking horse industry?
My fellow patriots, welcome back to Red, Rural, and Ready, where we defend the heartland, expose corruption, and fight for the forgotten men and women who feed and fuel this great country. And let me tell you something. I just watched a hearing that reminded me why America still has hope. Representative John Rose from Tennessee sat down with our new Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary Rollins. And folks, it's clear. We finally have someone in charge at the USDA who doesn't just talk the talk, but walks the walk. And maybe rides a Tennessee walking horse while she does it. Let's get into it. Because what I saw in this hearing was everything the left hates: pride in our farmers, common sense reform, pro-America trade policy, and unapologetic rural values.
Walking horse industry.
Well, I think the first conversation I ever had with Stephen Vaden, who I did not know before this process began about 6 months ago, was about this rule. So you have no greater advocate. I would like to say I am going to be the greatest advocate. I am a horse girl. I grew up showing horses, but I don't think I beat Stephen Vaden. So listen, our commitment is that we're here for 4 years. We're going to do everything we can to do right by our agriculture community, including our horse community. But if it all whiplashes back, you know, the day that we leave, then it perhaps is for naught. And so ensuring that we can do this in an intentional way with longevity is of utmost importance. So we'll really look forward to your partnership in that.
Well, thank you, Secretary Rollins. And I don't want to speak too much for the chairman, but he has enjoyed riding a Tennessee walking horse himself, and invite Ranking Member Craig to come down and experience that. And I think anyone whoever rides a Tennessee walking horse will understand what has made them so popular through the years.
Yeah.
So thank you for that commitment. I am proud of the investments in production agriculture Republicans secured in the House version of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that passed recently on the House side. However, we are still on the clock, you might say, to pass a farm bill with robust provisions that strengthen rural America. Madam Secretary, as we turn our focus to passing a new farm bill, can you highlight some of the titles and programs Congress should prioritize from your perspective to ensure that this legislation provides the necessary tools to bolster farmers and landowners?
Well, I think that a lot of that obviously is in the big beautiful bill. Hopefully we'll stay into the finish line, but if not, or if so, the continued effort on reference prices is so important for the viability and continuing work. Obviously, the rural prosperity part of this, we'll see what that looks like, but I'll be rolling something out on that very soon in partnership. A lot of what we're already talking about, of course, SNAP reform is a major, major issue. We've talked a lot about that today. Of course, that's 85% of the Farm Bill, depending on how you slice the cheese. So there is a lot that we can prioritize, but ultimately, continuing to put our farmers first, moving toward a new era of prosperity, opening up markets, bringing down inflation and the cost of inputs, ensuring we've got the crop protection tools that we need. All of the above is important. I'm not sure there's frankly, a more important effort once we get through this reconciliation bill and effort than the Farm Bill will be in just a little while.
Well, thank you. And you mentioned opening markets. You know, in my lifetime, and we're not that far apart in age, thankfully, for most of my lifetime, the U.S. has enjoyed a trade surplus with respect to agricultural products. But we saw during the prior administration that change to a considerable trade deficit. And I think that is driven by a number of factors, but first among them is the lack of focus by the prior administration on opening markets. So in the last 20 seconds, if you could speak to what you can do as Secretary and what the administration will do to open markets for U.S. agricultural products abroad.
We will be relentless and we will not sleep until those markets are open. And I think you see an all-of-government approach. And I've mentioned this, but let me repeat quickly because I know we're out of time. Just in my first 2 trips, first to the UK, second to Italy, headed to Vietnam, Japan, and India in a couple of weeks, then down to Peru and Brazil and others, the encouragement, the meetings I have had, not just with the government. The important piece of this is with the private sector as well. In Italy, a week and a half ago, I was meeting with the soybean buyers, the Italian soybean buyers, and they are so excited. I'm meeting with them again in a week. They're coming to America to talk about this, that the sky, I believe, is the limit for this new era for our farmers and ranchers.
Thank you, Secretary. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you.
Right off the bat, Representative Rose gave credit where it's due, applauding the Trump-Vance administration for putting Secretary Rollins in charge of the USDA. And you know what? It matters. For too long, the Department of Agriculture has been run by out-of-touch bureaucrats who've never set foot in a cornfield or baled hay in the dead of summer. Secretary Rollins, she gets it. She's a former FFA officer, a former ag commissioner, and someone who, like most of us, actually believes in doing more than talking. One of her first moves? Hitting the brakes on a ridiculous, overreaching, and frankly, impractical rule change to the Horse Protection Act that would have crushed our equestrian industries, especially the Tennessee walking horse community. Let me be clear, these horses are a symbol of our heritage. They're not political pawns. Secretary Rollins said it plain. She's in this for longevity, not headline grabs, not virtue signaling. She wants reform that lasts beyond the next administration. And that, my friends, is what leadership looks like. We're staring down one of the most important pieces of legislation this year, the Farm Bill. And for once, thanks to conservatives in the House, we're seeing investment where it belongs. Production agriculture, rural infrastructure, and support for the folks who actually put food on the table. Forget the bloated nonsense and climate change gimmicks the left always tries to stuff into these bills. Rollins and Rose made it clear. We're fighting for reference prices that actually keep our farmers profitable, not just barely surviving. Look, SNAP makes up 85% of the Farm Bill. That's right, 85%. Now, helping the truly needy is a noble cause, but when you've got able-bodied folks racking up benefits while refusing to work, we've got a problem. Rollins mentioned SNAP reform as a key priority, and I couldn't agree more. Let's get people the help they need, not the help they exploit. We need to refocus that funding to reward work, not dependency. Under the Biden administration, we've seen trade decline and markets close to American products. But Rollins, she's on a mission to turn that around. She's not hiding behind a desk in D.C. She's out there, traveling to Italy, the UK, Vietnam, Japan, India, Peru, Brazil, talking with foreign governments and private buyers. Meeting with soybean buyers in Italy, inviting them to the U.S. to build relationships. That's how you get things done. That's America First trade policy in action, building markets for our goods and standing up to foreign protectionism. Look, I'll be blunt. Secretary Rollins is the opposite of everything we saw in the last few years from leftist appointees. No empty platitudes, no Green New Deal slapped on the cattle ranching, no lectures about climate change every time a tractor starts. She's focused on freedom, prosperity, and results. It's so refreshing to hear a government official say things like, "We're here for 4 years, and we're going to do what's right." That's called accountability. That's called integrity. Folks, rural America has been ignored for far too long. Our roads are crumbling. Our family farms are disappearing. and our small towns are being hollowed out while Washington throws billions at urban pet projects. But with leaders like Secretary Rollins and allies like Rep. Rose, that tide is turning. They're fighting for prosperity in the real America, where people grow food, raise families, and still stand for the anthem. And how about a round of applause for Tennessee? Not only is Rep. Rose standing tall in Congress, but Deputy Secretary Stephen Vaden, another Tennessean, is now in a key role at USDA. You want to talk about a powerhouse team? This is it. And it proves what we've always known. The best leaders don't come from Ivy League ivory towers. They come from the fields, the barns, and the communities that built this nation. Rollins said it herself, the sky is the limit. She sees this as a new era, one where we don't just manage decline, but instead seize growth, where we open new markets, bring costs down, support crop protection tools, and make the USDA work for the people again. Not for lobbyists, not for foreign governments, for American farmers. I know it can be hard to stay hopeful when you see what's happening in D.C., at our borders, in our schools. And remember, it's not Washington that makes this country great. It's you, the American people, the backbone of this nation. So let's keep standing strong. Let's keep pushing back.